Everybody's talking about Mowalola. She has the internet in a state of fury after her Spring-Summer 2025 show. Some of the points of exploration will be the post-representational approach, exaggeration in scale, sexuality, Frantz Fanon's zone of being, the post-black art movement of the 2000s, the right to opacity by the Martinician theorist Edouard Glissant, and my final thoughts. I'm making this video with the assumption that you are familiar with Mowalola. Let's dig in. So personally, I think Mowalola may have been in pursuit of offering her work through a post-representational approach. That's when the artist challenges the need to constantly represent Black culture in a prescriptive, often reductive way, instead of conforming to stereotypes or even counter stereotypes like consistently positive images. The goal is to depict Black identity in its everydayness, complexity, ambiguity, nothing heroic, nothing oppressed, just human, with desires as basic as any other human, which brings me to the question of sexuality. So Mowalola has been exploring sexuality in her work since her debut at Fashionista. Clothes that are sliced, that cup the body in explicit ways, a sexuality that is exaggerated and aggressive and maybe feral in the way that it's depicted. Animal prints or sprayed on, motifs sprayed across these leather hides and fashioned into clothing, playing with the tropes of Black people being hypersexualized, our sexuality being seen as animalistic or ferocious, or simply being the subject of exotification. Her work seeks to reclaim this power through some of these elements of animalistic ferocity in her work. Mowalola also fights the impulse to universalize the Black experience. We are not a monolith and our expression should be limitless, but unfortunately we are imprisoned within a crystalline structure of racial politics. All of our actions and utterances imbued with a racialization that is hard to shed. To simply exist as human first, it may be a rare experience, especially for an African diasporic person, but I think that she's in pursuit of this. Exaggeration or scale is an artistic device, so Mowalola leans into stereotypes in her practice and also pursues a neutral, mundane expression of identity that is seemingly approachable to all people, but is layered with another sense of energetic intention if a Black person wears the same thing. I wonder about this. Can we be mundane? Can we be fluid? Can we be transgressive? Can we be chaotic? Can we be simple? Can we even be neutral? So this brings me to Frantz Fanon's zone of non-being. So Fanon discussed how colonized people, particularly Black people, are often trapped in what he calls a zone of non-being, where their identity is defined by external pressure, colonialism, racism, etc. Mowalola might seek to break free from this by portraying Black subjects outside of these external, imposed categories. Her work also relates to the post-Black art movement of the 2000s. Post-Black art is a category of contemporary African-American art. It is a paradoxical genre of art, where race and racism are intertwined in a way that rejects their interaction. So these artists embrace the idea that Black artists don't have to adhere to any particular definition of what Black art should be. They are free to explore all aspects of the human condition without being confined to any one aspect of Black identity. This leads me directly to Edouard Glissant's right to opacity. Edouard Glissant, a Martinician philosopher, spoke about the right to opacity, meaning that people, especially those from marginalized communities, should have the right to not be fully understood or reduced to simplistic definitions. The neutral portrayal of Black identity could be seen as a refusal to cater to an external gaze that demands legibility. Identity should be chaotic. It should not be easily contained. And we, as African diasporic people, actually all racialized people, should have a right to opacity. In regards to Ebony, the magazine that influenced both Mowalola and Dean Blunt, we should look directly to Theaster Gates. My favorite artist in the world. He has a sense of civic responsibility that is inherent to his work. Before I do any of that though, let's quickly look at Dean Blunt's Ebony album and see how Mowalola directly referenced it. Dean Blunt is one of the most legendary artists, another personal favorite of mine, and his influence is hard to measure. But if you don't know, I encourage you to explore his work. So let's talk about Theaster Gates. So Theaster Gates is a potter, a sculptor. He is an urban planner who is an activist. He is a factory owner who is a band leader. He's a real estate developer who's an artist, a university professor, a friend. I came into the art world with a broad sense of life, and I've tried to maintain that broad belief over the narrowing effects of the art world, which can make you commit to one way of making. That is such a beautiful sentiment, and I think it relates to Mowalola in the sense that the way that she presented her Spring-Summer 2025 show was a performance and a fashion show. We shouldn't be limited by our labor or our ability. We shouldn't be limited anyway. So let's go back to Theaster Gates. Theaster Gates' acquisition of the Ebony and Jet magazine archives from Johnson Publishing is a profound move that reflects his broader artistic mission to preserve and recontextualize Black cultural history and provide a platform for deeper engagement with it. Gates acquired the archives to ensure that this immense cultural record, documenting decades of Black life, history, and achievement, would not be lost or left vulnerable. The collection includes photographs, articles, and other material documenting the social, political, and cultural lives of Black Americans from the mid to the 20th century onward. He intends not just to preserve the archives in a traditional sense, but to activate them through public engagement. This might take the form of exhibitions, educational initiatives, or even collaborations with scholars and artists who can reinterpret the materials. Theaster Gates is safeguarding a vital component of Black heritage and history with this project, and if you get the chance to interact with it, I highly encourage you to do that. The first time it was shown was at the Fondazione Prada. Side note, he and Mucha are close friends and collaborate and work together actually. Now, for the more controversial elements, you can skip this part if you don't feel comfortable engaging with this part of the discussion. So, yes, let's begin, I guess. The N word. The inclusion of the N word is provocative and challenges viewers to confront its historical and ongoing weight. In this context, Mowalola might be interrogating how Black people navigate the contradictions of reclaiming or resisting this offensive word. By placing the word on fashion items like the buttoned up shirt or what is it called? Rimowa suitcase. We see that the word occupies a space of trendiness or superficiality, losing any kind of inherent meaning. She forces the audience to question how easily Black pain or identity can be turned into a spectacle or a commodity. We're all too familiar with the way Black pain has been used to garner clicks or views, but I often wonder, why are we the ones that are burdened with the pain of that word? I personally use it for racists. Actually, I laughed the first time I was called one. Another element that is definitely worth exploring is how the Black models with blonde wigs in the red latex tops were shown on the runway. The use of blonde wigs on Black models taps into this idea of identity, or more accurately, how identity is constructed, and racial performance. So we see blonde as a symbol of Western beauty standards, and having Black models wear them, these wigs, blonde wigs, subverts our expectations, forcing the viewer to confront issues of assimilation, presentation, and really the artificial nature of race and its cultural signifiers. Ultimately, Mowalola shows use these provocative elements to force a confrontation with how we perceive Black culture, both its reverence, its commodification, and how she uses the ebony tags, the N-word, the blonde hair, the hypersexuality, the animalistic motifs with such jarring aesthetics is likely meant to discomfort viewers, make you uncomfortable, push you to a limit, and make you reconsider what Black representation means in a world where culture is commodified. In blending ebony, the N-word, and blonde hair, she shows how Blackness can be simultaneously sacred, controversial, and consumable in a capitalist system. And honestly, in the end, who defines what is sacred and what is sacrilegious?